I want you to think back to when you were about 8 years old. You were probably the most annoying person in your house. Not because you were badly behaved, but because you wouldn't stop asking why. Why is the sky blue? Why do I have to go to bed? Why does the dog do that? Every answer just produced another why. And then, at some point, you stopped. Not because you ran out of questions, because somewhere along the way you learned that having an answer gets rewarded and asking the question stops mattering. Think about how school actually trains this out of you. Once you strip away what it claims to be about, a test rewards you for having the right answer, fast, under time pressure. It doesn't reward you for noticing an interesting tangent halfway through a question and wanting to go explore it instead. If anything, the tangent gets punished. You ran out of time, you didn't finish the paper, and you'd gone off topic. So you learn pretty early that curiosity is a liability if it doesn't lead somewhere efficient. And once you've learnt that lesson at school, it doesn't stay at school. It follows you into how you treat your own interests. You start asking, what's this for, before you let yourself get into something. Is this going to look good? Is this going to make me money one day? And if the honest answer is, I don't know, I just think it's interesting, that stops being a good enough reason on its own. You can see the same pattern in subject choices. By the time you're picking your later stage high school subjects, the question that gets asked constantly isn't, what are you interested in? It's, what's this going to get you? Good for your final score, good for a degree, good for a career path. All fair questions, but somewhere in there, whether you're actually curious about the subject, quietly disappears from the conversation. Nobody asks if you find it interesting, they just ask if it's useful. Here's the distinction I think actually matters. Curiosity doesn't need a destination to justify itself. It's the only mode of doing something where I don't know that where this goes isn't a problem, it's the entire point. Compare that to discipline, which is basically the opposite shape. Discipline assumes you already know what you want, and it's about forcing yourself towards it even when you don't feel like it. That's genuinely useful on its own, but discipline can't tell you what's worth wanting in the first place. It just executes. Curiosity is the thing that goes looking before you've decided what you're disciplined about. I think about my own list of stuff that I'm into, and most of it didn't start because I was planning for it to matter. I started teaching myself a bit of code because I was annoyed a website didn't work the way I wanted to, not because I decided it would be useful for my future. I got into editing because I wanted a video to look the way it looked in my mind, not because I thought it had become a skill that I'd need. None of that started as a project. It started as being annoyed, or interested, or just wanting to see even if I could. Here's something worth noticing. A lot of what eventually looks like genius, in hindsight, isn't really genius at all. It's just someone who stayed curious about one specific, often useless seeming thing for far longer than anyone else found reasonable. Most breakthroughs in any field don't start with someone setting out to change the world. They start with someone who couldn't let a small, specific question go, long after everyone around them had moved on. The useless phase is doing more work than people give it credit for. It just doesn't make any sense to the story afterward, because I was curious for years before any of it mattered doesn't make for a tidy origin story. I think this is exactly why curiosity gets squeezed out so efficiently and discipline gets all the praise instead. Discipline is legible, you can literally see it. Streak trackers, study schedules, 5 a.m. wake-ups. There's a version of it you can show someone as proof you're trying. It photographs well. Curiosity, on the other hand, does not photograph well. There's no impressive after photo for, I spent 2 hours going down a rabbit hole about something completely unrelated to anything I'm supposed to be doing. Nobody sells a course on that. It can't be scheduled the way discipline can, and anything you can't be scheduled is hard to measure how easy to deprioritize the moment you're busy, which, if you're our age, is most of the time. Social media makes this worse in a specific way. Everything in your feed is optimized to look finished. The result, the outcome, and even the after photo. You almost never see the part where someone was just poking around half interested with no idea if it'd lead anywhere. So it starts to feel like everyone else skipped that part. Like they went straight from idea to outcome with no wandering required. They didn't. You're just not shown the wandering because the wandering doesn't perform well. So we end up in this strange spot where the actual thing responsible for most original work, the genuinely interesting stuff people make, gets the least institutional support of anything. School optimizes the testable knowledge, productivity culture optimizes for visible output, and neither one has a box for got curious about something with no clear use and followed it anyway. I'll be honest about something because I think it's the part people skip. Following curiosity instead of a plan is genuinely inefficient a lot of the time. You'll waste hours on things that go absolutely nowhere. You'll get into something for 3 weeks and then lose interest completely, with nothing to show for it except whatever you happen to learn. Doesn't always look like anything from the outside. I don't think that's a flaw though. Honestly, I think that the waste of the actual cost of finding anything good, the same way you can't land on a good idea without actually sitting through a bunch of bad ideas first, happens. I think the people who only ever do things with guaranteed payoff will never really stumble into the stuff that wasn't on anyone's plan, including their own. They optimize their way into a narrower and narrower life because anything uncertain gets filtered out before it gets a chance to become something. None of this means discipline is the enemy. I don't think it is at all. I think they're just doing 2 completely different jobs, and we've gotten confused about which one's supposed to go first. Curiosity is what finds the direction. It's the part of you that gets pulled towards something before you have any reason to justify it. Discipline, on the other hand, is what carries you once you've already pulled towards something. It's the part that keeps you showing up on the days the initial pull isn't there anymore. The mistake is trying to run discipline first, before curiosity's actually pointed you anywhere. You end up disciplined about something you were never drawn into in the first place, which is exhausting in a specific way. It's not hard because the task itself is hard, it's hard because there was never a real reason underneath it to begin with. Get curious first. Let that decide what's actually worth your discipline. The order matters more than people give it credit for. If any of this lands, here's the only practical thing I'd actually suggest. And it's not a system, because that'd be a bit ironic, to say the least. Just notice once a week or so the thing that pulled your attention with 0 practical reason behind it. Not the thing you did because you had to, the thing you did because you wanted to know how it worked, or what would happen. Don't turn it into a project. Don't put a deadline on it. Just notice it happened and let it happen again next week if it wants to. That's genuinely it. Curiosity doesn't need much protecting beyond just not getting interrogated about its purpose the second it shows up. So, if there is a takeaway here, it's smaller than it sounds. The next time something pulls at you with absolutely no practical justification, no grade attached, no plan, nothing impressive to show for it, don't immediately just ask what it's for. Just go follow it for a bit and see what happens. You don't owe anyone, including yourself, a reason yet. The most interesting people I can think of, the ones who actually built something worth building, almost never look back and say it started with discipline. It started with noticing something and being unable to leave it alone. The discipline came later, once they already knew what they wanted enough to need it. This is first draft. I don't know exactly where this channel goes either. I'm just mostly curious to find out. I'll see you in the next one.